Screen hoppers, welcome back to Miku's Crackhouse. This is episode 116. I'm your host as always, Sam Kingma, and joining me is my best friend and co-host, Myles J. Myles, we are recording this immediately after finishing episode 115 because I am moving in a couple weeks and I wanted to make sure that the crackheads out there, the real ones, had episodes every single week I was gone and wanted to make sure.
They need to have
I want to make sure that they got their weekly dosage, you know?
Yeah. Well, I will also be out of town this weekend, so it's good that we record as well.
Yeah, so it's good that we sort of double up, and we're also going to double up next week, too, just to give ourselves a nice buffer. But, so hope we don't repeat anything we just talked about last week.
Well,
you know?
Sam, I have a documentary that I want to share with you.
Oh, yeah, please, tell me.
Sam, the psychology of cope is a serious study that I think we need to be more concerned with as a society. Cope is a big problem, and I think we all know someone suffering under the effects of cope.
Of coping, yeah.
And yet, no one takes cope seriously. People will flippantly say, oh, cope, when someone in earnest says something that they feel. Sam, I've witnessed cope for the first time. And I truly mean for the first time. In a big way. So I want to start this off by saying that I have witnessed a couple of examples of cope, but they have always been online. I brought this up when I was talking to Tom at one point, and I said, I don't think that people are, like, when the dust settles on Elden Ring, I don't know how many people are still going to be talking about it, because I thought it was kind of just another Souls instance that didn't have quite the same, like, legacy and staying powers as Dark Souls. But, like, that's because my perspective on Souls is I really like the flavor of them. A lot of people are really about the mechanics and the building and stuff. So Elden Ring had a lot to provide. And so I had trouble kind of understanding that perspective. I completely disagree with what I had said around that game at launch. Especially because as an open world game, it's huge. It's really impressive. Like, the amount of content is gigantic, and especially the amount of unique content, like unique assets and unique enemies, is impressive. And that taught me a valuable lesson. That anybody who says, when the dust settles and the honeymoon phase ends, everyone's going to realize that I was right, is suffering from perhaps some of the highest dosages of cope that the body can have without cope-ding, coper-dosing. And the first Tears of the Kingdom contrarian video finally popped up in my recommendeds. I was happy to see it. I was enamored to see it, because I knew it was coming. And more importantly, no one gave a shit! Because it had 70k views, which is not bad. It's great, actually. It's like $70.
Yeah.
But, like, for a contrarian...
It's a bit more than $70.
Isn't it? It's $1,000... It's $1 per 1,000 views, right?
A bit more complicated than that nowadays.
Fair enough. So a little over $70, but probably maybe even more over $70. But the point is, it was a 2-week-old video. It only had 70k views. No one gave a shit. Like, and so it was just very funny, like, to kind of see, like, oh, maybe the era of, like, excessive contrarian videos being like this hot commodity that everyone rushes to, like, it just doesn't work that way anymore. Now, if someone makes a video that's, like, kind of already got a name, like a Joseph Anderson, I think he could probably pull in quite a few numbers, and especially generate quite a lot of buzz if he made like a contrarian video. I know he did it for Elden Ring. He's basically done it for every major game release that wasn't God of War 2018, which is really funny. But, like, yeah, every major overhyped, over-campaigned up sequel to a game, he's made one of these, and they've always performed very well. You know, the Mario Odyssey Not a Masterpiece is one of those, like, titles. It's the Electric Boogaloo of, like, YouTube video essay titles. But yeah, like, and so I watched a bit of the video, and it's a fair video for him as a person. He's not very interested in the experimental, physics, sim aspects of the game, so that's a wash. He played the melee combat kind of more of a generic melee, like, press the Y button and dodge kind of player, and that's definitely got to be pretty boring, especially because he's clearly a Souls fan. He mentions it multiple times, and so Souls is way more involved and engaging. And he had a fucking Skull Kid PFP, which of course, and so like, of course, when he plays Zelda, he cares a lot about the story and the presentation. And he wasn't a big fan of Breath of the Wild. He wasn't a big fan of this one. Yeah, it was all perfectly understandable, perfectly reasonable. I had no problem with his opinions, but the like the cope and the like the just the lack of like I'm aware of how games are made of the video is just very funny. Like where he's like, imagine if this was more like Elden Ring, you have this ability and this ability, and I was like, yeah, well, imagine if Elden Ring was more like Breath of the Wild, where you could climb shit and actually interact with the open world. And like, do you not know how this works? Like, some sacrifice is made somewhere. It's called focus. Every game does this. But he ended it with that time-weathered adage of like, once the dust settles and the honeymoon phase is over, everyone's going to realize this is the worst Zelda game in the franchise. And I let out an actual real-life belly laugh because I thought that is the most cope I have ever seen about this video game in my entire life, and that I will ever see about this video game in my entire life.
I don't know. It's definitely not worse than It's definitely not worse than Wind Waker. It's definitely not worse than Twilight Princess.
Even for the games that
not worse than Skyward Sword and Majora's Mask for that matter.
That's the thing. Even for the games that everyone likes, right? Like, or that, you know, because like people like Twilight Princess, people like Wind Waker, people like Majora's Mask, people like Skyward Sword. There's still more than enough obvious contenders for worst in the series that people are happy to go to, frankly. People are happy to say, oh, fucking, you know, Zelda 2, you know, Triforce Hero, Spirit Tracks, and Phantom Hourglass. It's all the zoo. The zoo is so, it's just, oh, here's the tiger cage again. And so like that's a degree of copium I didn't think that I could see until I watched someone struggle, not with disliking Tears of the Kingdom, not with loving Tears of the Kingdom, but with not understanding why they liked Tears of the Kingdom and yet did not feel like playing it very much. And I, as their friend, saw that it was due to factors of work. They're fucking busy. They just don't have as much time to play games anymore. And they are not like spoiler averse, so they're not very interested in like experiencing things on their own. And also they're just not a big fan of the Zelda flavor. They like the N64 games like I do, but well, flavor wise, I only like one of the N64 games as a video game. But you know, and so of course, like the world of Zelda is this like kind of goofier world is not going to interest them, right? I totally get it. But like watching them like try to like cope with the fact that they prefer Breath of the Wild because it's the one that they finished, and try to basically imply that the mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom are roughly as good as Breath of the Wild and like is more of a lateral side grade than an outright improvement is one of that's like the most subtle level of cope I've ever seen in my life, where like it's not such a vehement. I would describe it as like some people have like a cope rage or like a cope high. It's like when you eat someone's face on bath salts, right? Like that's like a cope high, where a cope high is someone trying to argue that like redo of Healer is the greatest anime of 2023 or of like the 2020s. Like that would be a cope high.
Interspecies Reviewers is one of the best.
Yeah, for as popular as that show is, I think it's gonna be kind of relatively not spoken of. I think it's always gonna have fans. Every anime does, but like, yeah, like when people talk about like, oh, Demon Slayer is the best anime of the 2010s, like I know a lot of people disagreed with that sentiment, but ultimately Demon Slayer is still really popular. Sorry, Kimetsu no Yaiba, because that means something very different, but still really popular, still well liked. You know, the end of the anime, because I think it ended right. Like that had a pretty big fanfare, big send off.
Oh yeah, it ended around like the 200 chapter mark. The anime is still cooking right now. It's doing. Oh, okay. I'm not totally accurate. I watched the first 26 episodes of Demon Slayer, and the movie Mugen Train. The movie's fucking awesome, by the way. Mugen Train is sick. And the first 26 episodes are solid. Just, you know what the fucking problem is, Myles? It's the problem with all these fucking anime adaptations. Myles, with the exception of Death Note, name fucking one great and longer running anime slash manga series where the best part is the first, like, 40 chapters. Like, never is that the case.
Yes. Yeah. Because I now that I'm trying to think, you really can't. I mean, like, the unusual thing about manga is, for as much as manga tends to shit the bed at some point, for the most part, it usually also just has a really strong run throughout. Like, that's why the Golden Age was the only one that got adapted in the 90s of Berserk, because at the time that was the best Berserk content, and also the only Berserk content you can get away with, because the murder of children on screen is something you can't do, so Lost Children can't be adapted. And I think Lost Children had only, like, just come out, if anything.
Yeah, so like, it probably wasn't going to be...
Yeah, we were onto, like, Binding of the Holy Chain by that point, I think, relatively early in Berserk's life, right? Yeah, like, it's just an issue of, like, you gotta stick through all these shows, and you gotta stick through all the stuff that's, like, just okay, and you also gotta stick through the pacing of it being worse, because with the manga, you get through those first 40 chapters quick.
And also, it might not get there!
Yes.
It might just not get there, or it's a One Punch Man situation where the following season is a huge drop off in quality, or a different studio's doing it, or there's some major changes from episode fucking 12 to episode 13 or whatever, you know? Or you got to be a chuckle fuck like me who likes ReZero anime and thinks it's one of the best fucking pieces of fucking media ever, and I gotta wait 6 years for the next season, you know?
Yeah, and so like the people who are on Copium rage, or like having like they say like coked out lunatics or whatever, like coped out lunatics.
Yeah,
those are the people who are going to be raving in the street. Like, a lot of like lolicons on Twitter are these coped out lunatics, like, because the funny thing is they'll always be like people who watch Marvel movies are always like, oh man, this is the best movie, everyone's going to remember it. And then all the lolicons come out in droves and be like, you're going to forget about it in a week. And it's like, yeah, you're also going to forget about whatever, you know, cunny slideshow you watched this week. Like, I don't know. It's just hypocrisy of the highest order. All these like anime fans who are like salivating over the latest seasonal thing are just never going to remember it. No one's going to remember. Like, it is really sad to think that like already your Forger stocks are just way down. Like, even though
so Myles, what you're telling me is after the dust settles, it will not be remembered.
Ding, ding, ding. And that's the thing. The people
who are coping... That statement is true. I agree with that statement. The people who are coping
about things like that, right? Where they're like, yeah, once the dust settles, people aren't going to remember interspecies reviewers. But it's like whenever people are like, yeah, when the dust settles, no one's going to remember The Godfather. Like that, or like the gaming equivalent of that, you know? Like, that's when I'm always like, are you high? Like even for me, the assertion that people would forget Elden Ring was so off the mark. Like, for me to even think, frankly.
Yeah, because it's like a crazy fucking game that's sold a shit ton of copies.
And it was also a lot of people's first times with Souls. And so a lot of people got to have that magic experience that, like, for me, had been... At that point, it was routine for me. Like, you know...
Yeah.
But by the time I got to Skyward Sword as a teen, like, Zelda had become routine for me. It's very different from, like, an Ocarina of Time, whereas for a lot of people, Skyward Sword might have been their very first. And so that magic...
Twilight Princess.
Yeah, Twilight Princess was their first.
See.
And that magic, like, is always gonna be there for them, right? And so, like... And again, Souls is just inherently good. Elden Ring is just inherently Souls. Therefore, if it's your first fucking time with Souls and you don't have a reason to both nitpick the Souls experience or nitpick the specific issues with Elden Ring, let's say you're like a Dark Souls 3 person and you don't like how relevant Vitality is, because it's not very relevant in 3 from what I've heard. Like, Elden Ring is just going to be Souls. And it's going to be good. You're gonna get Miyazaki's storytelling with all this imagination, with great production value and great assets and rock solid,
it's big
rock
Dark
solid
Souls.
Fundamental combat. Like, it's gonna be great for you. And
Elden Ring is big Dark Souls 3. Like, that's exactly what it is.
And so, like, the cope that I always love to see, though, is what I like to call cope, right? The cope, where you only just realize that someone's coping because they can't stop scratching their nose, right?
God, I just watched the sniffing episode of Seinfeld, by the way, on Father's Day with my dad. Shout out.
That's a quality episode.
And that is a really quality fucking episode. When Kramer downs the fucking 36-ounce beer while he's smoking a cigarette. So fucking good. Dude, that shit's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What a fucking legend.
Oh, man. Shout out to Michael Richards.
Guys better start calling me Sam Kramer from now on.
Well, yeah. Didn't we decide that I was Kramer and you were George? Or what was it we decided?
I am George. I mean, I am probably, I don't know. I'm equal parts George and Kramer. If
That's fair.
If a Lovecraftian creature of the sorts could exist.
I think I'm definitely Kramer and Jerry, which a lot of people don't like to be Jerry because obviously he's the kind of like stand-in, just whatever guy. But like, Jerry is awesome when you're actually watching the episodes. Yes. Because he's the one who has to deal and suffer the consequences of wearing the puffy shirt. Yes, exactly. Like the thing is, the scenarios that he is in are really great, and Seinfeld as an actor and a comedian absolutely sells them. But like Kramer has the compilation. Kramer has the clip compilation. Like when he goes to the mailroom and he's like,
"This is going in my Kramer compilation."
Yeah, but one of my favorite moments is when Kramer goes to the post office. He goes, "I want out," and they're like, "Want out of what?" He's like, "Just all the mail. I want out. I don't want any more mail." And like just the implication that like you could stop getting mail if you want, and like it's this like big conspiracy that like, no, you have to get the mail. We'll be out of a job if you don't get the mail. But the sniffle copes, the little sniffle copes where someone says something and you realize that they are in the midst of a cope habit forming. And I had this moment when someone said, "Yeah, I think that Tears of the Kingdom is more of a lateral side grade than a true like sequel replacement." And it's like, no, everything about this game is better. Everything is better. You're just not into it anymore. You're just not into games anymore. Like, and that I think it's also just a case of he's slowly accepting he's not interested in games anymore. And it's like I don't know what to tell you besides you don't like games and you're trying to find whatever reasons you can to not play them. That's always the funniest form of cope, is the cope in which people use the cope to find an excuse not to do something. The sour grapes cope. The famous a man sees grapes to a man who has never tasted wine says sour. Like the famous Arabic quote, I believe it is, where it's like, I just love that cope. That cope of someone who will tell themselves a lie because it saves them time. That's my favorite one. That's the best kind of cope in the world. And so I love when I catch people in a cope habit. I love when that happens. Copers.
You ever consider, Myles, you're the one who's coping? You ever consider that maybe you're the one who's coping? Maybe you're the one who wanted the game to be good, and you're the one who's coping, and it's like, yeah, it's better in every single way.
No, because I don't think it's better than every single way. I think it's mechanically there's a handful of things that I think Breath of the Wild does do better. I think the inclusion of tech in Breath of the Wild is better. I like the amount of technical skills in the combat's really interesting, especially the cancels and things like that. It allows for now a more fast-paced combat experience. The atmosphere of Breath of the Wild and the kind of like purity of its survival mechanics, the themes of being out and about in nature is much stronger. And I think there's less superfluous aspects of Breath of the Wild. There's a couple of like moments in Tears of the Kingdom that have some repeat content elements, things that like are just not as interesting, second, third time around. But like mechanically speaking, there's just nothing in Breath of the Wild that matches up at all.
No,
and I don't know how to tell him this.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I'll be honest. I kind of fucking fell off this game. I'm not super interested. I kind of played 35 hours of it.
That's great.
And I just was like, I'm good. I'm feeling good. I don't really want to play any more of this because it's like, I feel like all the individual aspects of the game are just better than Breath of the Wild. I think the combat in Breath of the Wild is kind of a little boring, and the physics tomfoolery is really fun. However, I feel kind of limited in when I'm able to take full advantage of those moments. Where in Tears of the Kingdom, because fusing is such like a wide, there's just so much variety with how you can do it. I can make whatever I need to happen with only like a few, like a handful of clicks. I'm still not like crazy about the combat though. I know you say there's a lot of like tech and there's a lot of like
not
like
in this
cancelling type stuff. In
Not
Breath of the
in
Wild,
Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, there is in Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom's a little bit more limited and restricted because it kind of expects you to play it like a fucking lunatic. Like the fact that one of the best moves against boss bokoblins when their bokoblins is all formed up is to fuse a bomb to your shield, then do a shield jump in front of them and just break their formative line with an explosion directly underneath you that deals absolutely no damage to you and propels you into the sky so that you can follow up with another attack, is the point of that game. And like the combat, like once you start thinking about the combat in that way, it's way more fun. But again, you have to get there.
Definitely, yeah.
Like especially as a player in the skill and experimentation department, you have to get there. I think
you really gotta put in the effort to really like try everything out and really like and not only try everything out, but try everything out on your shield and your bow and your weapons too. So it's like it's not even just like, oh, you know, the key's eye only has one use. It's like, well, that might not necessarily be true, you know?
Yeah. Well, like for example, all wings make thrown weapons fly farther, for example, and like that's not useful compared to putting it on an arrow. It's really useful on a boomerang, for example. And so little things like that where you start to think about like, all right, well, there's no reason to put a wing on a sword, but the wing on a shield is really great, or like a mushroom on a sword and shield is great. Not very great on an arrow. Just little things like that. I think you should try it again later, but like right now,
that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, enjoy Street Fighter 6. Like, dude, like enjoy when Armored Core comes out. Fucking enjoy that.
I'll be playing that. And I just because I just feel like my problem is I just felt like I was just very much playing it like Breath of the Wild. Like I was very like fuck tough. Off. I'm gonna just go and explore, and I just feel like innate exploring in Tears of the Kingdom is just not as fun and as compelling as it is in Breath of the Wild. But to be fair to Tears of the Kingdom, it does have more main storyline content that I just didn't feel super compelled to continue doing, even though I enjoyed the Water Temple and the lead up to the Water Temple. And from what you've told me, that's like one of the weaker temples too.
Actually, in my opinion, the weakest one.
Well, that's great. That's fucking awesome, because that means it's only up from there for me as terms of the mainline content. How long do you think the game is if you were to mostly like, stick to like
beeline the mainline stuff? I would honestly stay still 30-40 hours. Like I think the thing about it is that I have a friend who really didn't do a lot of non-mainline stuff, and he ended up with a 55-hour playtime. But that's obviously including, you know, growing pains first time. I gotta turn on my fucking lamp because it's getting dark in here. Yeah, like first time elements, growing pains, and figuring out the game, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I would say maybe if you already kind of know what you're doing, probably 30-40 hours. I mean, it's not bad, like for sure. I definitely think that innate exploration is really interesting, but I think directional exploration is a lot better. Like, and so like, don't just hunt for all, like, don't just stumble around until you find a cave. It's like there's an actual mechanic in the game that tells you where all the caves are, and it's hidden, and you got to figure it out, but it's there.
Yeah, you got to play it like a more traditional open world style game where you're mainly it's about following the fucking objective. Like it's about fucking doing what they tell you to fucking do.
And like you want to,
which is not inherently a problem. I just didn't do it. I just didn't listen.
And that's the thing. Like it takes a while to figure that out. Like with Breath of the Wild, it's the entire game is 100 small tasks, whereas this it's like you don't want to do the small tasks. You want to fight the Kleok. You want to fight Cleoc, dude? Like,
exactly. And I will say that innate exploration is interesting up until you reach like the offensive capability threshold where you can handle yourself in a fight. Because when you start Tears of the Kingdom, it is hard and it's awesome. It's fucking sick. Because you basically die in 1 to 2 hits. You have no cooking tools. You have no fucking food. So you die a lot and your weapons are weak. But eventually it will get to a point where, or at least I felt like in my exploration, and I only really stuck to like the eastern side of the map, like the Akala kind of region. And
you just see me take a hit of cope, by the way.
Yeah, I was hanging out there, and I feel like, you know, by around like the 20-hour mark, I had good weapons that were like had good fusions, and they were gonna stick around. And
what's cool is all the stuff that's really worth experiencing. You still have to find a lot of it, but they'll direct you to it. Like if you want to cut out all the grasslands, it's like get on a vehicle, fly. And there are ways for you to, like, if you really just want to see all the like the interesting stuff that's in the game, you can get a lot of the caves marked down, or you can find the old maps that'll tell you where in the depths you should be heading for unique treasures. Like the game absolutely, like, you can skip over all the Breath of the Wild parts if you want, like, which is pretty nice. It's definitely like, and to get back to the cope thing, like there is there's been a couple of moments like this where I'll just like see them just gear up to say, no, I don't want to do it, without just admitting they don't want to do it. Little things like one thing is, I got them to play Death Stranding and they were into it, but like not into it enough to keep playing, which is fine. And I have no problem with that. But I think the reason, besides I'm just too busy and the game didn't hold my attention, was they told me, it's like, yeah, I just don't like games where you have to use the right and left trigger too much. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, sure. I guess that makes sense. Like it's just
don't like fucking shooters.
Yeah, well, it's the kinds of things where, like, I think there's a difference between me saying, like, with Sekiro, like, I don't really like the second meter, because the stance meter, because what I needed, I guess, was more exposure to games where I realized, like, oh, this is a really cool mechanic with a lot of, with a lot of unique things that I could do. I'm ready to try Sekiro again, right? Like, and then the other thing is, it's not, like, I bought the game, I'd like to try it again. I didn't find a way to convince myself that I didn't need to experience Sekiro, even though it was something that I was initially interested in. It's the odd motivation of, like, why are we coping? People do drugs for all sorts of reasons. Why do people do cope? I think that is the big question that fascinates me about cope heads. Where like
Cope Kane.
Yeah, Cope Kane, where people Cope Lily Kane, where people are just so desperate. They're so desperate for something that justifies an opinion that could easily be, it just didn't grab me, or I just don't want to, or I just can't afford it. That's the big one, by the way. I just can't afford it. When the poor people get on the cope,
oh no,
that's when I'm like, oh my god! If you didn't spend all your money on cope and got a job, yeah, dude. If these people didn't spend their money on cope and got a fucking job, they wouldn't have these fucking problems. That's the best one, is whenever they're like,
so if you see this, like, oh, I just, it looks good, I just can't spend $70 on Tears of the Kingdom. Is that what you see?
That's a classic one. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different ones of these. I think like, I remember people were like, it's too much money for $60 for Animal Crossing New Horizons, and like, that's subjective, but like, ultimately Animal Crossing New Horizons was going to be supported for years by Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like, you're buying a base game with a bunch of free updates, and you knew that.
Exactly. And like, this is my thing. I think it's totally a fair thing to say X game is not worth X amount of dollars. Okay, then just wait for it to go on sale and stop complaining about it.
Yeah, where I got like annoyed was in particular, someone said this game is $60, I'm shoplifting it. And then they went into this long like rant about like why shoplifting is an anti-capitalist move and it's based as fuck and it's going to send a message. This is the
meme of the artist comic of the stealing comic.
Yeah.
If you remember
the shoplifting comic. Yeah, be gay, do crimes. Where like someone was like, I have no problem with people who shoplift bread because they're starving, but like shoplifting a game is not morally right. And they were like, entertainment is important to mental health. Are you saying that poor people shouldn't have good mental health? I'm like, I don't know, just find other entertainment if you can't afford it.
Crazy. That's a crazy statement. If someone said that to me, I'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind.
Well, the fact that it's like do you have
you're out of control. You're out of control. I can't watch The Wire. I'm having a mental health crisis and I need to watch The Wire I need to watch Veronica Mars right now.
But I can't sign up to Hulu. It's like, all right, find a torrent, dude. And quality might suck. But the quality is not going to be good. Oh, well, all right, well, is quality important to your mental health too? Like, is 480p
my mental
really
health will deteriorate if I am not watching it in at least 1440p.
Yeah, I love. There's a great joke in Hi-Fi Rush where Peppermint scrambles some video feed and whatever his name is, Zaz or Zazu, whatever, the green-haired guy who does the JoJo poses. He's like, why can't we see what's going on? And the robot's like, they're transmitting it in 480p. It's unwatchable. That's a good joke. And
that game's really funny. That game's really funny.
That game is really funny. But in particular, like I have had times where like I wanted to pirate something, and then the quality was too low, and I said, "All right, well, there's no good scans. What official channels can I go through to watch this?"
Dude,
because if the quality's important, I'll pay for it,
bro. I care so much about the audio, the video quality of Riverdale that I sit through 18 minutes worth of fucking ads an episode. It takes me an hour plus to watch a 42-minute show. Like, but I give a shit. I'm not watching it in 360p on Couch Tuner. I'm not doing it. I'm gonna watch it in good quality and suffer with commercials every 5 minutes.
It's just like the cope that people take in order to like make their own lives easier for stupid bullshit. I'm working too hard to be. I'm not interested in Tears of the Kingdom right now. I'm focused on work. Okay, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Like as opposed to like, yeah, I just don't see it as enough of an improvement that I really want to finish it to the end. I mean, like maybe, but like the particular like the even that I think that's a fair thing. But like even the sort of like you can't rule it yet. You can't rule it as a lateral side grade just yet. I don't know. That's one of these weird like that's their code. I think for I don't intend to finish it, and I got everything that I wanted to out of it, but I don't really feel like admitting that.
I don't know. Like people could just say that.
But like, but
I'll
again,
say I said it. Like,
but I know that you're not coping when you say that. I know that you're not coping when you say that. You have to understand this is a friend.
What's there to cope about? I wasn't that excited for the game. And really, I was really only excited
because that's it.
72 hours before it was announced.
They were very excited for the game. This was the only game they were looking forward to.
Yeah, see, yeah, exactly.
And that's where the cope comes in.
But Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, I can cope. And if that game is not good in 2 months, I can cope about Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. I can cope if Sonic Superstars is not hitting, is not good. You know, those are games I could actually unironically cope.
Yeah, and so when you're like, oh, well, they could just be saying it, I'm like, no, you could just be saying it because you were not that interested, and so there's nothing to cope about. The thing about drugs, Sam, is that people take them to deal with problems, and when people take cope, it's to deal with emotional pain. The emotional pain of being disappointed. right? Like, if you're like, yeah, I mean, I played 35 hours of Tears of the Kingdom. I'm not as enthusiastic about it as you. I never was going to be. I probably never will be. Like, okay, yeah. No, that tracks. That totally makes perfect sense to me. Like, you're not coping. There's no pain in that statement.
I'm not upset. I'm not upset that I don't really like it as much as you do, or most other people. It just is what it is.
It's just you know what? It's just whatever. Like, and you'll play it again. You'll give it another shot. You'll see. You know, maybe you'll like it less. Maybe you'll like it more. Who cares? It's like, but there's not that like. And here's the thing: you might never get around to it, and that's fine too. Like, but there's not. It's like your pupils aren't dilated. You know. I can tell you're not on the Copium. I trust you when you say you're not on the Copium.
No, I'm not. I'm not on Copium. I'm not on Copium, Mom. I'm not on Copium, Dad. I'm not on Copium.
When I'm talking about my friend who says this is a lateral side grade, it's one of these things where like I know them well enough to know like you don't mean that. What you actually mean is that you're not going to finish it and you feel bad.
You feel bad that you don't like the new Zelda game and you have to wait 6 to 7 years for the next one.
Yeah, well, they like it. It's just I think that their priorities in life have shifted, and they're sad that their priorities in life have shifted. I think that's
cope. A unique cope. That's a very
the cope.
Unique,
that's the real cope. Where like they'll always have just a reason to not see a game through. And the reason is always like something to do with the interface, something to do with I didn't like the fucking shoulder buttons, like just things where like I'm like, what was the last game that you finished in the last fucking 4 years? And they can't tell you. I'm just like, you just don't like games anymore. There's not a single game that excites you. Every fucking time there's a trailer, you're not interested. You just don't like games anymore. Stop coping. Accept it. It's okay. You work too hard.
Go watch hobby. Go watch TV. Go watch YouTube.
They're into anime now. Like, there you go. You don't have to play games anymore. Save you a bunch of money. Just pirate a bunch of anime. Everyone does it.
I mean, I get it. I mean, video games are like an active medium. You have to actively, willingly participate. They do require mental faculties and brain power that passive media doesn't. Yeah, my gaming over the last like 2 years is definitely not really what it was like in college or in high school or whatever. Like, I definitely don't play games as often as I did like a few years ago. I still love them very much, and I really give a shit about the medium, and I still play them. I just don't. It's just not. It's not really an everyday thing.
We're not getting platinum trophies like we used to. Just to do it, you know, like.
Yeah, no, like today after we finish this episode, I'll have nothing going on the rest of the day, so I'll probably pop on and play some Street Fighter. It just the thing is that like I'm since I'm going to be moving, I don't want to like get involved in anything like kind of long.
Yeah,
you know, I don't want to like with Street Fighter, I can just play it. I can play Street Fighter for any period of time and have fun. And, you know, walk away from the experience saying, I had fun. That was a good time.
Not only that I had fun, I can be done for the day. And if I don't log on tomorrow, it's no big deal. Whereas, like, with a single-player game, you're racing the world if you want to go online, like, and experience anything about it. That's the real reason people have to buy games day one, because otherwise, they'll be spoiled immediately.
But I gotta be honest. Can we talk about this like this specifically? Let's break this down. Because I've been really thinking a lot about this. Because it really is the last thing that people are hung up about buying games day one. Well, they got to be a part of the conversation. Well, it's a fucking conversation.
There's not a conversation worth
having.
A
part of? I'm not a part of anything. I play games in a fucking vacuum. You know? I mean, like, I like that when I finish a game.
I like that when I finish a game, I can tell my friends about it. We probably all finished it at the same time, you know? Like, that's nice, but, like, there are people who, like, are on Twitter, and they're like, oh, I gotta make fucking content about the game. It's like, you're making
You have no audience!
Yeah. You're making tweets where you say, yeah, really not sure about this mechanic, bud. Like, yeah, I don't really know about this Clive's dog in FF16. I don't know if that's the right choice. I sure do miss party members. Like, okay, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Who's interested?
It's very, like, and I just feel like it's not worth it. It's really not worth it to buy games on day one to exclusively just because other people are doing it and people are talking about it and it's like the topic du jour of the week or whatever. I just personally, I have found that is not a justifiable reason to buy a game day one. A justifiable reason to buy a game day one is because you're excited about the game, actually, you know?
Yeah. And like I'm excited about FF16. The reason I might not get it day one is just because I should be saving that money and I still have a game that I'm playing actively and interested in playing actively. It's like, okay, I can wait. I'm not going to talk to anyone about FF16 anytime soon. Like, when I get around to it, I'll be happy. But
it'll be there when you want to get to it. And depending on when you want to get to it, it might be $20 to $40 cheaper.
Yeah, and it might have patches that help the performance and
patches, or going by fucking 15, additional content that radically improves and changes the quality of the game.
Now, to be fair to FF15 or FF16, it is the first game I've heard of in a long time that was managed well enough to have no day one DLC.
Well, it actually is getting a 300 megabyte performance patch.
Is it now? Okay.
So fucking gotcha.
Yeah.
Creative unit, business unit 3.
You got me.
Yeah. Gotcha, Yoshi P.
And you know what? I might see something that makes me go, oh, fuck yeah, I gotta play this now. Like, it happens. Just whenever my interest is piqued in the story of Clive Rostfield, I think his name is. I'll certainly go in and try it out, and I'll play it in Japanese, so I don't have to hear a bunch of British people. It'll be great.
But the game was designed for the English dialogue, though.
Oh, I'm fucking sure it was. I don't give a shit.
No, I mean, it literally was. The lip syncing is all to the English.
I'm sure it will be, and I'll be fine. I'll live. I can't stand another British fucking cast.
What, Xenoblade fuck you up?
Xenoblade, dude, Elden Ring, I actually almost fucking tore my ears out with some of the performances in Elden Ring. Like, some of these, like, airy British fucking whores. Like, just whenever you meet a female character with rosy apple cheeks and you just know that she's gonna speak in this airy fucking lilt, you know, oh, I see that you're tarnished. Like, just fucking sucking the cock of every fucking consonant in her booth, just getting as close to the microphone as possible. I see that you're tarnished. A rather sore sight, don't you think? But beggars cannot be choosers when you need assistance at the volcano manor. It's just like, okay, all right.
Come on, man. Doesn't it immerse you in classic Western style fantasy world?
It immerses me in Hidetaka Miyazaki has a fucking fetish for women with no shoes on. Like, I don't know. For me personally, I just can't see it as anything other than someone trying to get the style right. But even then, like, a lot of these stories don't have really, like, airy voiced women. It's such an oddly specific thing to Souls, which gives it identity, of course, but, like, the only, like, mousy voiced woman I can think of in a fantasy project is quite literally in a fucking forgotten 90s direct-to-DVD film starring Jack Palance called Hawk the Slayer, which might actually have been an influence on Miyazaki because it stars a maiden in black with, like, a big band over her eye with, like, one eye on the band, and she speaks like, oh, but the prophecy will tell you, and I'm like, Miyazaki has to have seen this film. Because this is the only fucking project I've ever seen that actually, like, has the Dark Souls, like, crone.
That's so funny. Is this like how like the theory about how Ichiro Oda for One Piece ripped off Romancing Saga 2 for the 7 Warlords of the Sea? How basically all the seven villain, like, they're called the heroes, but they're like the villain characters of Romancing Saga 2. They're all like 1-to-1 fucking like
you would actually be surprised how many, like, seminal works, like the Binding of the Holy Chain chapter of Berserk was inspired by the time that Miyazaki watched, like, a movie from, like, the 90s or, like, 80s about, like, the Crusades. And it's just, like, now, like, Binding of the Holy Chain has taken on a life of its own, but, like, he probably watched that movie and thought, oh, Guts would Guts should be in this situation. Like, that'd be interesting. Like, and so that happens a lot, I think. But then there are also times where it's like you watch like Brotherhood of the Wolf, and like they are just straight up wearing the Hunter's outfits in Brotherhood of the Wolf, and or like the Ringed City is just the Angel's Egg City. Like that's what's so interesting about Miyazaki is he's both extremely creative and extremely derivative of things that he likes, which is why it's very similar to Hideo Kojima. It's very fortunate he's working in games because he can transform these things.
Yeah, he can continue to make poison swamps and all his media. You know, I don't know if you could get away with putting a poison swamp in your 4th or 5th movie. You know, like,
right? Well, it's also just the fact that it's like if you're watching a TV season and oh god, here's another poison swamp. I mean, there is a difference between something having like a sort of like style to it, versus like I would argue that like you have the kind of cyclical storytelling of Zelda, or Link to Zelda Ganon, or blah 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 blah, right? Like I would argue that Miyazaki also has a similar cyclical style where it's like 4 gods, ancient war that happened in the past. The hero is a character of almost no importance whatsoever to the world, but they are able to run it forward and take the torch and take over the world and become the new whatever.
The new guy.
Yeah, whatever. He becomes the guy from I Wanna Be the Guy.
I wanna be the guy!
I wanna be the guy! Actually, speaking of I Wanna Be the Guy, I want to talk to you about something that I think that you'll agree with me on this one, Sam.
Please.
So there's all the Hat in Times and Bug Fables and all these like Kickstarter games or indie games where the point of it is like, oh, we're gonna be taking
we're
thing.
literally this.
Yeah, well, I described it. I described it as the games that Nintendo, like people who make the games that Nintendo don't.
Yeah. You mean Nintendo won't?
Yeah.
Because they could.
Yeah, they could, but but that's the thing. Like, and so, like, people are like, "Oh, Bug Fables is such an improvement over Paper Mario," and it's like, of course it is. They didn't have to do anything. Like that, they literally took a game that everyone already likes, and then they rebalanced it. Like, and I mean, obviously the story is, it's great to have a new story. It's great to have a new cast of characters. Like, but that's not the game. That's the art assets. That's the script. And I always think it's whenever people like praise a game that's like one of these Kickstarter games, it's like, oh, they're doing this game, but it's so much better than what it's like. Well, yeah, of course it is, because they didn't have to make 100 decisions. They didn't have to ship it out on as much of a deadline. Oh, and also the game was made for them already. Like, I know that's a really reductive way of viewing it. I really do. But like, do you ever get annoyed by this? Like that people are willing to kind of like give this massive credit to basically just reinvention of an existing idea and then specifically packaging it not as a ripoff, but as a direct iteration and inspiration. And like suddenly we're all okay with it and we're all very happy to have it.
It is funny how people's opinions on it are so quick to, because remember like a few years ago, in like probably like late 2018, maybe even early 2019, there was that like Kickstarter for that like magician 2D shoot 'em up, and it basically looks like Cuphead more or less. And everyone completely like dunked on the fucking game because it was like it looked like fucking Cuphead, but it wasn't as fucking good looking, and the studio wasn't as talented as them. And they basically got completely dunked on, and the game disappeared off the fucking face of the earth, and they stopped working on it. Where like, it's like, then you look at something like fucking Hat in Time, and it's like, oh yeah, 3D platformer guy, or like, or it's like, because then there's the other side of it where it's like the ukuleles or the Bloodstain, where it's like, hey, we're the guys who did X and we're doing X again. Because I agree. I feel like these games sometimes are given a little way too much. I feel like they're just given way too much credit off the bat, and we don't think about like
I think there's a case to be made about like this magician game, right? That looks like Cuphead. Like, it's entirely possible, and we'll never know anymore, that the boss design could have been better than Cuphead. People had a problem with the premise of this game that looks like Cuphead, right? Like,
yeah.
That, now, I personally don't believe that would have happened. Cuphead has great boss design. And obviously the presentation helps a lot, especially with visual clarity and the clarity of like, okay, I see something pink, even though it's a different like shape than I'm used to.
Yeah.
I can parry this, right? Like, you know, it could, as long as the color matches. All right, great, I can parry this, right? Like, that's all really just good game design that I think that it helps that they came up with that system themselves. Like, and so anyone who would implement it has Cuphead to thank, right?
And also, Cuphead has fucking Gunstar Heroes to thank, and Batman and Robin, the Adventures of Batman and Robin to thank, and a myriad of other, like Alien Soldier, a myriad of other shoot 'em up, shmup
Like classic boss,
run and
like
gun,
boss rush shoot 'em up
Contra
type games.
Yeah,
but
like the entire
Alien Soldier is probably the best like comparison directly, because that game is like a boss fight after boss fight.
Yeah, it definitely a mix of Alien Soldier and Gunstar Heroes. Definitely more Gunstar Heroes as far as like control.
Yes, and especially the enemy manipulation, the parry, like a lot of that is very Gunstar Heroes.
I know, and it's like, but Cuphead brings to the table like something new, like a really unique, incredible art style, phenomenal music, along with a great boss designing, level designing gameplay.
Yeah, like, so I don't think that, just because this game got canceled, we're missing out on this masterpiece. The masterpiece that never was, but...
Oh, no, and I don't think that either. It's funny how, like, all showed up to shit on that. Yeah, like, here's Bug Fables, which, by the way, I think Bug Fables looks fucking amazing, by the way. I don't want to, like, shit on it. Because it does look good. Yeah. It actually does look like of a supremely high quality.
Yeah, and like the art style's great. I hear that the world building is about as on par as like Thousand Year Door. Like, so that's, you know, Thousand Year Door is a very like extensive game. Clearly, a lot of work and thought went into that world. But it is just very funny where like people are fine with ripoffs as long as they're called spiritual successors, and as long as people aren't making another version of that, like that is readily available and comparable. Whereas like people are. Like, this was just a cottage industry back in the day. Like, people would just make a ripoff of a popular game. The amount of, like, Zelda clones that just were nothing like Zelda and were, like, terrible.
Oh, dude, yeah,
like,
dude, fucking Doom clones
so popular.
and...
Yeah, Doom clones. And to be fair, a lot of those Doom clones were great.
Military shooters during Call of Duty era. Like,
yeah, most of those were not good. Like, and again, to varying degrees, you know, I think... every genre has had at least one, you know, sort of watershed game that became either its own subculture of genre, like Zelda-like.
I mean, a ton of shit ripped off fucking Space Invader.
Yeah, like every
even
game,
good games like Galaga.
Yeah, every game is just taken from another game and reinventing from another game. The difference between a ripoff and a spiritual successor is how much fucking time has gone by and how much everyone likes or dislikes the new ones, if there are new ones being made. Like, I'm sure that there's right now an F-Zero-like game someone's working on. I'm sure it looks great, even.
You mean like Mega Man Zero?
No, F-Zero.
Oh, F-Zero. Oh, yeah, there's a couple.
Yeah. I'm sure they're all going to play well, and they're all going to be great. And whatever.
Some games already exist. Like there's like Fast Remix, which is on Switch, which is pretty good.
I'm sure that game's great.
There's a Redout, which is kind of like a spiritual successor to like Wipeout or Ripoff. Wipeout.
Yeah. So that game's fun too. Like, but yeah, like you look at like, I don't know, Bug Fables. I don't have as much of a problem with. I haven't played it, and in particular, I don't think Paper Mario is all that good. Like really. I think it's a like as a video game, I should say, like as a fun weekend. I think
there's a lot of potential mechanics to build upon.
Exactly.
I'd like to play Bug Fables. That's actually a game I would like to play.
Yeah. And so like with a game like Bug Fables, like whenever people are kind of like, oh, let's improve so much on Paper Mario, like a part of me is like, oh yeah, of course they have. They haven't made a Paper Mario game in 7 years, or in 17 years, frankly. Like, of course, it's such an improvement. It's the only attempt anyone's made.
Yeah,
and I think that's
but like,
kind of where.
How do you feel about? But like, what about like a game like Bloodstained: Curse of the Moon? Like that's definitely like a ripoff of Dracula 3 or Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse.
There is that kind of weird, like with Bloodstained in particular. That's a really weird one. That's a really, really weird one because it's particularly helmed by Igarashi, but it's Igarashi's attempt essentially at making like this new like franchise. But he does so with like by hiring out to Indie Creates, and it's really funny because Indie Creates apparently had no real direction and involvement from Igarashi, and so
they were just given the characters.
Yeah, and so they
basically
made like this like really like morose and hardcore and dark game, and like Igarashi was like upset at the tone because they made it so dark, because Bloodstained is dark-ish, but like it's also like Symphony of the Night. It's got its fair share of laughs and its fair share of like whimsical moments. Like, you know, the confessional in Symphony of the Night's really funny. You know, a lot of the Easter eggs with like the fairy are very funny or very cute, and funny because she's a fairy, and she's small, but. My sense of humor is eroded so much. Christ. This is what happens when you record for 3 hours.
This happens, exactly.
Yeah, but like, then you play Curse of the Moon. And by the way, I prefer the tone of Curse of the Moon, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I like how hardcore that game is.
I mean, I've beaten Curse of the Moon 10 times. I've played 6 hours of Ritual
of the Night.
Ritual of the Night. Although, to be fair, the only reason why I stopped playing Ritual of the Night is because when I booted it up for my second session after my first 5-hour session of no issues, the game was just crashing all the time. So I just fucking kind of fell off. But, like, I probably would have stuck with that game and beat it because I was fucking really digging it. I kind of want to go back to it now that we're talking about it.
Honestly, I recommend you finish it. I don't think it's an amazing game. I would say it's a Myles 7. It's a really good 7. But
yeah,
like,
Myles 7's like a fucking 8.
Yeah, for everyone else. It's a Myles 7 is a review outlet 9. So, all right, no, a review outlet 8 is probably more accurate. But yeah,
like review outlet high 8.
Yeah, high 8, like an
8.7 and up.
8.7, yeah. Well, I think 8.7 is actually like the IGN score for that game, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't know why that number sticks in my head. I remember it having the tagline, sometimes it's good to get what you want, because it was like the only successful like kickstarted revival by these hacks who got fired.
Because Iga's the only one who wasn't a fucking hack, actually.
Well, exactly. Iga was designing games even before the Symphony of the Night era, like, and to pull out a game like Symphony of the Night, to like reimagine and redesign Castlevania like that takes a lot of skill.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is, he didn't direct the game; he just produced it, and that's still a lot of power. So, I do think that there is a lot of influence from him, but also it's just had a good team. It had a lot of people who had a lot of good ideas, and it had a lot of money to work with, and a lot of interest. And playing Japanese.
I wish I liked Symphony of the Night.
I know a lot of people who aren't really big into that game, and there's something about it that
I really want to like it. There's a lot of
really
I'll admit to cope with Symphony of the Night. I wish I liked it.
That's not cope. That's just you admitting you wished you liked it. like cope would be like, yeah, I mean, I think Symphony of the Night's like it's I mean, it's a great game and all, but like I just think like we could do better. Like there have been better Igavania games made. Like, so why would I want to play one that is just gonna is just gonna feel so primitive? Like that's cope. That's cope. Whenever people say like, yeah, why would I play the original Super Mario Bros. When 3 is so much better? It's like, that's cope. You should play Super Mario Bros. Because eat your fucking vegetables. It's historic and it's fun.
It is good.
You don't even have to finish it. Just have an experience with it.
I've played it way more. I'll say this: I've played Super Mario Bros. Way more than I have 3.
I think 3. I like the movement of 3 a lot. But I think 3 is such an evening. It's like that's a whole
3's
day.
Your whole day.
Yeah, like whereas like OG Super Mario Bros. If you use warp pipes, it's 20 minutes, and if you don't, it's an hour and a half.
Oh no! If you use warp pipes, it's 10.
There you go. Like yeah, if you wanna get the princess out of her castle, I mean you can obviously use warp whistles, but like the difference between warp pipes and warp whistles is that warp pipes, you still got to get to them. You still got to clear at least 2 very hard levels in the very right way. Where you screw up, it's
8 levels
over.
Minimum.
Yeah,
you got to do to beat the game.
Warp whistles in Mario 3.
You get 2 of them in the first 8 minutes, and then you can use them to warp to the end, which is not because here's the thing with Mario 3. is that Mario 3, you're spending the entire game building up an inventory of items.
Yeah,
to
so
use
you can
at the
tackle
end.
the end of the game.
So even if you could just warp to world 6, 7, 8 or whatever, and you wanted to take a break back in the day and not leave your NES on, or not use save states or anything like that if you're trying to be a modern day purist player, like, you're gonna have to just sit there and play for like 5 fucking hours. And I don't want to play Mario 3 that long.
Yeah, it's just a very funny situation with that game where I recognize the movement is really great and better, but like, hey, Mario World's got a save system. That's the deciding vote.
Yeah, and also I like playing the levels multiple times in Mario World to like get
That's
new.
True.
I think the levels are a bit more interesting and they're fun, and I prefer Mario's control in World. I mean, I know, what a hot take. Wow, look at me, so fucking brave, you know. But yeah, I like Mario's movement more in World, and I like the cape, and I just like it more. When I'm like, I want to play classic Mario, I go to Mario Brothers. If I want to play classic Mario and I have like some time, I'm gonna boot up Mario World and do 96 exits.
Yeah, I think Sam, we really should commend your ability to not do cope. Like, you're just so open about being like, yeah, I didn't fucking like it, whatever, fuck it. Like, I am tempted by cope. I certainly am tempted by cope, and the whole reason that I've done this sociological study of cope is because I need to understand the effects it has on me. I am definitely at a point where I'm like, dude, I care way too much about what fucking weirdos on the internet think. I gotta stop.
Thank God he admits it. Oh my God.
No. Dude, I've always known this. I've absolutely always known this, but like, there was that cope. There was the cope element of like, you know, I just am fascinated by what people have to say. It's like, that's true. I am. At some point, though, you have to stop. At some point, you let it affect you too much. And so, like, I've just been doing, like, the reason that I talked about the Zelda Zoo is I was like, this is exposure therapy. This is fucking exposure therapy to learn how to, like, just point and laugh and not take it fucking seriously.
Yeah, just let it go. Just let it all go. Because I'm with you, man. Like,
I think the problem is also just the fact that it's such good content. Like, for me,
it really is. Oh yeah, for yeah.
If we didn't have this podcast, I might honestly be better about it, but probably still not good enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I very rarely do I see a stupid take or whatever about video games or some copious take that like really sits in my craw, you know, really simmers and settles in my stomach. Most of the time, it's just like I see it and just I'm like, oh fucking Christ, and then like move on with my day.
Yeah, well, I think the ones that always get to me are people who are so bold about something they clearly know nothing about. Like, I think I talked about this. Did I ever talk about Film Courage?
No.
So Film Courage is a YouTube channel that I watch. It's got writing advice mostly, especially screenwriting advice. And it's a bunch of screenwriters who are working in America, writing for American producers to get things made for American audiences. They are dispensing advice on how to make a Hollywood film. This should be understood, right? You sign up to Film Courage. Yeah. The video will be titled something like "How to Succeed in Hollywood as a Screenwriter" or whatever. It's like what Hollywood producers are looking for. It's targeted towards people living in Los Angeles trying to write scripts. And then the comments will just be people who are like, well, the Japanese don't do this with their writing. Like, for example, there's a Castle in the Sky. It doesn't do this technique, and that's a great movie. And it's like, yeah, because it was made.
Yeah, and was Castle in the Sky funded by fucking Harvey Weinstein? No.
Would have been, yeah. It's like, what are you thinking?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Japanese don't do this. Yeah, how many fucking Japanese
and I think the
other thing in America?
The other thing that people don't seem to understand is that they're irrelevant and they're nobody. And like, by the way, that's so many people in Hollywood. That's not insulting to say. It's just a fact. And so they'll be like, well, you know, like someone will be like talking about, well, here's how you get your first screenplay sold. You should write something that, you know, sells, or if you can't, produce it yourself and direct it yourself. And, you know, that's going to cost a lot of money. It's a big risk, but, you know, you got to do it. And then there'll be all these people who are like, yeah, well, you know, I want to be, I don't want to be a rented director. I want to be like a Martin Scorsese, or, you know, I want to break the ground. And it's like, all right, dude. Like, why don't you travel back in time to the 1930s when it was possible, when it was possible to walk in with one of these scripts and it'd be a groundbreaking creator, like
big dick swinging.
Yeah, and it's always like by the way, it's always people with the worst grammar. This is always the funniest thing, is that these are like the writers who are talking about how much they're so much fucking better than all these Hollywood hacks. Now Hollywood's bankrupt creatively and they don't do anything, which I mean, all that's true, but like
they're light larking, Myles.
Yeah,
they're just light larking.
They're light larking so hard. But the thing is, all these light larkers are also people with terrible grammar. And it's like, isn't this your job? Shouldn't you know how to do this? Like, because one of the biggest pieces of advice, if I see a typo in a script, I stop reading it and I put it in the trash because it means they didn't care enough. Now, that's the producer's coping. That's the producer's copium of saying, like, I have 15 scripts to read. And I have to find a reason to say
to throw it out.
Yeah, this one's not worth my time anymore. Yeah, like even if they're vibing along, they think the scripts are good, they're going to give it a recommend, or if nothing else, a consider. They're going to give it a weak recommend or a strong consider, and then but like, oh, we got 10 other projects and we got to throw one of these out. Like, you know, okay, I found a typo. Great excuse. We'll get rid of it. Fuck that guy. Right? Like, it's just very. These like wannabe people who want to succeed in film but also don't actually want to play the game should just do what I do and just play another game. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, to be honest, this is basically almost any creative outlet or thing you try to do, especially if you want to be a professional, and by professional I mean be a creator who makes money. Like, you need to tailor the content, be it the movie script, the YouTube video, you know, fucking the album, fucking whatever. Like, you do need to understand what people want on like a base level, and you can't just go free balling 100%, because that's not necessarily going to lead to success, you know,
or returns.
Like, and I'm not even saying that you need to make something, because here's the deal: there's a difference between making something that appeals to the masses versus like making something with like with making something that like it, like can connect with people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
that. I think there is a difference between like a Marvel movie, which is a big dumb crowd pleaser that everyone likes, and like one of these sort of blockbusters that, like a Star Wars, right? Like, Star Wars really captures people's imaginations.
Yeah. Or like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I saw for the first time recently.
Really?
Yeah, I saw for the first time a couple days ago. Really loved the movie, by the way.
Yeah, that movie's excellent.
Excellent.
Yeah. And that really connects because it's got a very strong message, and the presentation of the message is very powerful, and it's very accessible. Like, because it's I mean, that's what Daniels does, like, as filmmakers. It's not super duper, like, it's not pretentious, so to speak. It's very, like, goofy, and it's also very lowbrow. It's kind of down in the mud with all the people who laugh about dildos and farts and all that. And I think that's kind of its power as a story. Is that you don't have to have you don't have to be a fan of Truffaut to understand its treatise on existentialism, because it's done through the idea of a universe consuming bagel. Like, you can kind of just like laugh along with the film until you get a speech that makes the bagel make sense, and it's a stupid pun. Everything bagel. Like you that movie connects to people because it's not trying to alienate them, and it's not trying to shut them out. And like that's a big thing that you can do, is just have a really good message without this is what I always say with prestige TV. Prestige TV's job is to confuse you into thinking you're watching something that's like actually smart and good. And it's all a Fugazi. Like, all these fucking shows are just replicating the style of these things. And like, here's what you do to make prestige television look like prestige television. You get some really, really good film cameras. Get a great lighting specialist. Someone who can color correct the shit out of the scenes. Have everyone have naturalistic, rambling dialogue, but not to the mumblecore point. Like, more to like the point of like, you cast a bunch of the story's about a bunch of 20-something, 30-somethings who are figuring out life, and so you, of course, make the story in such a way that it's about, like, you know, people trying to figure it out, the dating world, right? And so there's a whole speech that your fucking scraggly-haired motherfucking protagonist has, where he just rambles endlessly, and what he's saying is both full of really great nuggets of wisdom, but it's also under the Rick and Morty attempts at naturalism, where these characters stammer and stutter and have and fucking try and make the sentence sound naturalistic. They're doing what I'm doing, but in dialogue, and it's written down. And then the third most important thing is you need to have a series of contrivances that eventually congeal at the end of the story into some sort of mind blower finale, and it doesn't matter what it is. It straight up doesn't matter. There's an episode of Dave that like left me scratching my head, where they wanted to clear ants out of the apartment, and he got into VR porn, and he got a fleshlight, and so basically like he gets rejected by a girl. And so there's like all this like sad music as he goes to the VR porn, right? But then ants have gotten into the fleshlight, and this is like 3 or 4 different plot points that are all converging, and like there's this really sad, disturbing music, and then he puts his dick in the fleshlight, the ants start biting it, and he like stumbles over the balcony and falls over. And like that's like funny as fuck, right? That's a great like comedic setup. But like the scene leading up to it, and maybe this is part of the joke, I don't know, is like this like really like dramatic scene where it's like, oh, he's so, you know, he really blew his chance with that girl. He really can't connect to
that's
people.
gotta be a joke, bro. That's like, gotta be part of the bit.
That I don't know. It has to be, because the problem with Dave is that it's split between like Dave is this like pathetic man-child character, and also he's a brilliant artist, and like it's kind of split between like taking him to task for being, for being like this incompetent idiot who has a lot of talent, and also kind of like representing him as someone who is struggling with self-worth and the need to like stand out, show the world what he's about. And so like it was one of these because here's the thing, it's directly, I think, preceded by an episode that has like a really bizarre setup that involves like, and it's all absurd, but it essentially ends with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is doing a story on him and one of the songs he wrote. Because I guess Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is like and he's playing himself, by the way. And basically he like, Dave tries to give a speech about how he thinks he's not a good person, but he has to be if he wants to be a good person, because the only way that he can change people and make people feel better is with his music, and he has to be aggressive and cutthroat to get his music made. And then at the end of the episode, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar breaks his foot, and they wheel him out on the stretcher, and Kareem says, "You're not." And it's like him basically saying, "You're not a good person," right? And like that's a pretty like severe scene, right? Like he breaks his foot, it's pretty dramatic, it's pretty tense, and then he basically tells Dave that he's a terrible person and like reinforces his insecurities. And this is like after the Fire Ants episode. And so it's like, again, that sort of like that mishmash of like, yeah, it could be a parody of prestige TV, but it could also just be an earnest attempt at that kind of thing. And it's just like that. I don't know. I'm sure it connects to someone. I'm sure all these prestige TV shows connect to someone.
You connected to 24?
I connected to 24 because 24 is amusing. I think it's a very different example of what we were talking about from Everything Everywhere All at Once, like as an example. Where that like you connected that on an emotional level. But yeah, I mean, I think like 24, that's an appeal to the masses show, and it's a great show. But I didn't exactly get misty eyed at 24. You know, like it didn't leave me with anything that I walked away with feeling like I'd improved.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I understand what you're saying.
That's a great show, though. I mean, Veronica Mars, I feel very similar. I'm not going to finish Veronica Mars and I'm probably not going to think about Veronica Mars all that much after I finish it, but it was a great wild ride. I'm glad I filed it away, and I'm glad I had those emotions.
I'm glad I watched the media. I'm glad I experienced the media.
Well, that's what we were talking about, where it feels like with games, everyone's trying to experience the media instead of play the game.
And we're back. Sorry about that. Riverside yet again, causing fucking problems.
Sweet Andrea. She's at it again.
I know. Sweet Aubrey.
Sweet Aubrey. Yeah, like part of my exposure therapy is always like looking at these comments, and especially always seeing people who are like who are like, yeah, it's not as good because I want this and it doesn't do this, right? Like, I think I even wrote this down in my notes. People who their issue with a project is, I really want a game that does this, right? Like, and it's the most like stupid, arbitrary crap. Like people who are like, yeah, man, I really want a game where it's like an RPG, but like you're a cowboy. It's like a cowboy RPG, which I mean that could be cute, like that sounds amusing.
But then you say to him, it's like, all right, you could play like Red Dead Redemption 2, like that'll probably be what
it's
you want.
It's not an RPG. I want to have turn-based combat. It's like, well, you could play the Wild West chapter of Live Alive, I guess.
Yeah, you could play Wild Arms. Well, it's too old. I need to have better graphics.
Yeah, it's got to be a new game. Like, it's like when everyone's like, man, I really want a game that does this. I'm like, I don't care what you fucking want. Like, and part of my exposure therapy was like looking at like review. I look at a lot of reviews now. I read a lot of comment sections now. I don't even remember where I saw this, but yeah, like someone who was like, yeah, man, why can't they just do a game? Oh, I mean, it was probably Zelda related, most likely. But they were like, yeah, why can't they just do a game that like has like more realistic graphics and like a darker tone, but like also takes place. Oh yeah, no, I remember. They were basically saying, why can't they do another game that takes place in Termina? And I'm like, why the fuck do you think they can't do another game that takes place in Termina? Because I was trying to remember. The sentence that they said specifically is darker graphics, darker story, more mature mechanics, and I'm like,
stop,
what?
Stop, Myles, stop. More mature mechanics?
That's the one I really wanted to talk about. Like, what do you want, a fucking mini game in Zelda? Like, more mature mechanics.
The blunt percent becomes real. It comes just a regular mechanic. He can just start casually smoking weed, like fucking Snake Cannon, Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like a more mature mechanics. Like, does he mean like like the game is harder, like adapt some Dark Souls stuff, or like does he mean, excuse me, does he mean like the rally system in Bloodborne where blood is involved?
What does it mean? What does it mean? What is a mature mechanic? What does that mean?
A mature mechanic's old direction, Sam. It's like, what do you think it means?
Oh shit, I haven't thought about old directions. Fucking forever. Jesus Christ.
I haven't thought about the cum sub either. But I just all these apes, at the zoo.
All these gorillas.
All these actual gorillas. These fucking Kongs at the zoo. Like, whenever people are like, yeah, well, I really want a game that does this, I'm like, that game's not happening because you also won't buy it for $70. Fuck off and die. Like, I don't know, man.
I know. That's
I think anyone who says, I want a game that does this, it's like, what? Why? Why do you want a game that does that? Like, unless it's based on, like, an existing game that you feel didn't do it well enough, like, why do you want a cowboy RPG? What does it matter to you?
And it's just like, it's just so funny to me, man. People are so fucking funny, dude.
Well, it's as you said, they only care about the premise.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, I've just come to realize this, that like we're in the minority of people who actually care about the game part of the game experience. Like, I care about the interactivity. In my opinion, interactivity is like the number one most important element of any game I play or anything that claims to be a game. I care about the interactivity. Interactivity can come in all sorts of different ways, You don't fucking really like shoot any, I'm not asking like, oh, every game's got to have combat. I'm not saying that. I'm saying every game's got to have interactivity. I need to be able to do stuff that matters.
I think a big part of it for me, like, especially because I play a lot of Nintendo games, and a lot of Nintendo games are mechanically very dry, I guess is a good word to put it. Like, if you're not Mario, you're not Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, you're probably a fairly easy game.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Like, but I also like seeing game design in action. Like, to me, that's a form of interactivity, and I'll take that too. But there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, like, oh, my favorite game ever is a fucking over bloated game with great character models. Like these same people who are talking about like, oh, The Last of Us is the best game ever, they would probably get a kick out of a lot of these RPG Maker horror games that have like much deeper stories and much deeper characters. Well, I don't mean to say much deeper. Last of Us does a great job. But like, you know, like a lot of these games just can say more because they don't have to go through a rating system. And they don't have to be made for everyone on the planet or else the company will shut down. Like, a lot of these people would probably really dig Mad Father or, you know, one of those kinds of games. Even something like Lisa the Painful.
Yeah, but those games aren't on a console.
Yeah, they're not on a console
and
they're not...
do it.
And they don't have voice acting and they don't have 3D models. And so, like, whenever people are like, yeah, I want a game that does this, that game probably exists. It just might not be at the scale that you want. I think that's why, like, whenever people are like, oh, you know, the new Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, they're not even Zelda games. It's like, yeah, but they are giant open world games where you interact with everything. And that game, by the way, has existed for a long time. Just not at this scale, which is nice for me, right? Like, and so that's kind of where I always differ with, like, oh, you know, I want a game that does this. Well, that game probably exists. I just don't know about it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Whereas
like,
a lot of people are like literally asking that game to come into a reality, like as a pipe dream, as a wish. If they were on a fucking deathbed at St. Jude's, that'd be their Make-A-Wish wish.
Exactly, but like, and this is the thing is, it's like because here's the deal. I feel like a lot of times people will, if they say they want a game that does XYZ, that game does exist, but they just like, they can't get over themselves because gaming started in 2010 for them, you know, like, and they just can't go back because it's, you know, too old, too antiquated. It's aged. Oh,
I did love seeing
God.
I did love seeing the discourse around The Last of Us remake where people are like, yeah, The Last of Us is starting to show its age. I think it's a good thing that we're getting a remake. and I was just like, what? It's showing its age?
They didn't even change anything about the game aside from the graphics.
They introduced elements from Last of Us Part 2, apparently. I don't know how.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Joel cannot jump. Joel cannot crawl or go prone.
Wow, okay.
No, it's the same game. It's the same. It's literally Last of Us remastered, but they redid all of the art. And they redid all the models. And it's just a PS5. It's Last of Us 1 on PS5 with PS5 graphics. But the game is the same. It did not incorporate any of the gameplay improvements, fucking 50 air quotes around that, and Last of Us Part 2.
What an amazing lie. Like that, because that was like, yeah, we wanted to do all the stuff with The Last of Us Part 1, but with all the improvements of The Last of Us Part 2, and I was like, all right, you know.
You mean the graphics?
Yeah, that's exactly what they meant. They meant the graphics and probably like some of the engine stuff, like you know, like okay, fire's more realistic now, you know, better particle effects, better.
The Last of Us on PS3 looks good, and I'm tired of pretending that it doesn't. The Last of Us remaster on PS4 looks good. It looks like no, it doesn't look good, Miles. It looks great, actually.
I agree. I agree with that. Like, but who is asking? I know you're just quoting me, but genuinely, who is asking you to act like it doesn't look good? Like, that's a genuine fucking question. Like, who out there, especially the majority vote, who like other than the fact that Sony can get away with selling the game again, and specifically selling it as a premium DLC, and I just you know, shout out to a little game called Death Stranding, made its director's cut $10 DLC if you already own the original game. Shout out to that game. A little bit pretty cool little thing for them to do. Whereas like Last of Us, it's like, all right, we remade it. It costs $10 more than it did at launch. Now, not adjusting for inflation, it might actually be cheaper than it was.
It is cheaper. Adjusting for inflation, it is cheaper.
Okay, it is cheaper. Okay, yeah, like which I'm a proponent of. All right, if it's cheaper due to inflation, fine, I get you. But I'm definitely like. What? It was so wrong.
You're paying $70 for like a graphics upgrade, and like if you are comfortable with doing that, and you like The Last of Us that much, and you want the graphics upgrade, then like go for it, Chief. But like me personally, I don't. I'm good. Like,
well, if nothing's different, and the game won't be any better, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's not like a different. There's too many fucking remakes. I'm sick of all these fucking remakes, dude. I've crossed the threshold like a couple months ago. Maybe it was Resident Evil. Maybe it was just with Resident Evil 4 coming out, where I'm just like, I'm over the remakes. I was having fun with them for a few years, and they were fun for a while. But there's too much. There's too many fucking remakes.
I gotta be honest. Like, even with Resident Evil 2 remake, I wasn't interested because I didn't want that remake to just be a different game. Like, because it's not Resident Evil 2. It's
a completely different fucking game.
Fucking third-person shooter, and it's a great game to people who aren't me, because I didn't really dig it that much. But I can recognize it's a great game. It's well-designed and made a lot of great decisions, you know. I got no problems with it. Like, as a video game, I'd never tell you it was bad, it just wasn't for me. But, like, I didn't want a remake of it like that, because I wanted to play from a top-down view with a fixed camera angle. And so I got that remake, and I was like, okay, I'll play it. And then I played it, and I was like, I don't really like how inconsistent the enemy stagger is here. It's not for me. So I'm just gonna stop. I think I finished the game, though. I think I finished both campaigns. And I have to say, I think, because I truly do not remember.
I think you beat it a couple times.
I might have gotten quite a few of the trophies. I don't know. Anyways. But, like, even then, I was kind of like, the reason that they're remaking these games is because it's something that everyone has wanted. They have all these assets, and they have an engine that lets them do it probably more easily than if they didn't have Reach. And, like, because it's easy, because the game's already been made for them. I get it,
because that's the thing, is I get why we're getting so many fucking remakes, because in a world where video games apparently just need to cost $150 million to make, which is something I will continue to beat the drum, is fucking completely unnecessary, and games do not need to be that fucking expensive under 95% of circumstances.
I think a lot of the cost is just down to, like, the assets are taking too long to develop.
I mean, it's primarily a couple things: employee headcount and paying for employees. Assuming
that's a big one. The team size doesn't need to be as big as it is. The amount of unique assets in a lot of these games don't need to be as many as they are. Like,
yeah, exactly. And it's getting to the point now where games are taking like upwards of like 6-7 years to fucking make. Where, like, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. It should not. We shouldn't have to casually wait like 5-6 years for a studio's next game to come out.
By the time that the game has come out, you are such a fundamentally different person. And it's one of the most interesting aspects of, like, you could have been a fan of Final Fantasy, right? From the SNES era. You probably waited a couple, 2 or 3 years for 7, right? Played 7 after 6. Both those games back to back were pretty influential to a lot of people. You got 8 and 9 like right after.
Immediately.
And you got 10 like right after. And you could continue to, like, through your adolescence, through your teenage years, or into your adulthood, be a Final Fantasy fan, and then it just stopped. And it took 5 or 6 years for the next mainline Final Fantasy game to come out. And so all the old Final Fantasy heads like myself, who grew up with the 16-bit games, the 8-bit games, and the early 32-bit games, and X. I did grow up with X. Final Fantasy 16 is coming out in 2 days, and I don't care. Because Final Fantasy is just no longer the most prioritized IP in my life, especially when a Zelda game just came out, and I actually like this one. And like, that's the risk. That's the risk that you take, is people lose interest or they age out of the franchise. Some people don't age out of games, but a lot of people do.
Dude, like, this is why, like, I'm so, like, among other, like, reasons as far as, like, personal taste is considered that are irrelevant here, like, this is kind of why, like, I'm not really interested in, like, any of what, like, Sony's first parties are doing right now, because they're all fucking sequels. Like Ghost of Tsushima looks fucking awesome. When that shit comes to PC, I'm gonna get the fucking the port of it, and I'll spend fucking full price on it. I don't care. I like Sucker Punch. I think they're a fucking kick-ass studio, and the game looks amazing. But in 2026, are we really gonna be fucking jonesing for Ghost of Tsushima 2 after half a dozen other excellent-looking Japanese, Chinese, like, ancient Asian history-inspired games come out, like Rise of the Ronin or Black Myth Wukong or a couple other like similar style games, like, are we really gonna be fucking hungry for another Ghost of Tsushima
and
6 years after the first one?
That's where like we are such a bizarre subsect of people who, there are people who like the IP. Oh, I'm so glad to have another Ghost of Tsushima. I really liked Ghost of Tsushima. I said that wrong the first time. Where they're just a really big fan of the experience that they had with Ghost of Tsushima. They probably don't even realize what it's doing that they like so much per se. Or they do because it's interesting to them, and they're just happy to have more of it. There's probably quite a few people who are fans of Ghost of Tsushima from a game design standpoint or from a narrative standpoint. The particular story it's telling or the particular world it's creating is really important to them. And then there are probably people who just liked being there and showing up and getting Ghost of Tsushima injected into their veins. And they're just happy to show up. And it's one of these, like, it's just one of these situations where I don't know what someone 7 years from now is going to get out of an IP that they only mostly enjoyed. Like, and especially, like, back in the day, you didn't need to have a bunch of diehard Ghost of Tsushima fans for the sequel to be worth making, right? Like, you didn't have to, like, because you gotta remember, like, Final Fantasy sold just okay for a lot of its existence. And I think even at, like, 4, it didn't sell all that well because I think 3 was the first, like, really big success.
Like, in the, 90s and, like, early to, like, mid to late 2000s, like, games didn't sell nearly as well as they do today, but way more games reached over 1 million copies.
Yeah.
25 years ago than today. Like, because and you didn't even money is in a few major releases every year.
Yeah, and you didn't even really have to, like, the game didn't even have to be like a massive blockbuster to justify a sequel coming out, so to speak. Like,
exactly, and that's because the game
interest.
There was interest, and the games had a reasonable budget. So there were reasonable expectations, like, you can't have nowadays you can't have a game that's a fucking Square Enix failure where it sells millions of copies yet it didn't make its money back, like Tomb Raider,
Yeah.
Or Outriders even.
Which is such an insane, like, I have to wonder if Foam Stars is both an attempt at, like, a little bit of that Splatoon live service updates kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, you're buying it, but we're going to keep supporting it and you're opting in. So, like, that's the real appeal, stick around, keep playing Foam Stars. Or if it's a true live service game. I'm
pretty sure Foam Stars is going to be fucking free to play because I don't think they're going to be able to convince anyone to spend any money on Foam Stars.
That's like, what I thought. But then I also have to wonder if the idea of it is like, yeah, we're making a nicer, cheaper little game that we can do a free-to-play experience on. And you know what, Sam? If it's free-to-play, I'll play Foam Stars and I probably won't give it any money. And I'll have whatever fun I can have with my free version of Foam Stars.
I'll say this: when that game was shown off at the PlayStation Showcase, people were definitely shitting and dunking on it, and the game is definitely it's a soap game. It's goofy as fuck, but like from a marketing industry perspective, like Splatoon's super popular, and there's nothing else like it, not even close.
Yeah. And not only
especially
that, like,
not on PlayStation or Xbox or PC.
Yeah, and a lot of these people might not even realize they would or could like Splatoon. They either don't own the console or they don't like Nintendo, or I don't know. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of different reasons why that could be. We're like, oh, I'd like to play Splatoon, but I don't own the console, or I'll never buy a Nintendo console. Fuck these games, right? But like, so it's a good idea. It's a good reason to do it, and it's probably an even better reason to do it because the game can look okay, like, graphically, because it can be stylized to shit. Because that's what Splatoon is.
Like all the live service games are. They're all fucking stylized.
They're all like that Fortnite style cell shaded thing.
Basically, yeah. And the reason why it is like that is because it just makes it easier for crossovers, baby.
Yeah, it makes it easier for crossovers, and it also just makes it easier to keep supporting the game in a reasonable time frame, reasonable turnarounds.
Yeah, because as people, whether people want to admit it to themselves or not, live service games actually getting constant updates is extremely important to the game's continued health and success. It's such a horrible. It's such a fucking brutal field out there with fucking live service. It just is so fucking. It's the more and more time goes on, the harder it's going to be for one of these games to even be successful. Because the moment another one does enter the ring and actually sticks around for a while, well, guess what? Thousands of people are playing that every day. Which means there's thousands less people to play other stuff every day, you know? So, it's just so fucking... So that's the thing with, like, foam stars. Is, like, foam stars in reality, probably, like, after the first month, you're probably not going to be able to get any people in matches, and anyone who bought stuff is going to be disappointed when in 6 months the game shuts down, and you can't play it anymore.
Yeah, I remember, like... You were like, dude, Multiverses is going to stick around. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I genuinely did think it was going to stick around. But you know why? Why it didn't stick around? No fucking support. Where were the fucking characters? Like, the actual characters people cared about. They never made them. They, like, never made any meaningful DLC. They released the game in a fake-ass early access beta that they, like, low-key, they're like, yeah, it's free, but if you want the characters, give us $40. And I'm like, okay. And then, like, a year goes by, they don't make any updates, they don't make an effort to be a live service. They just say it. Halo Infinite, by the way, same shit. Halo Infinite's like, yeah, we're a live service, doesn't act like it, doesn't actually put in the effort to be a live service. Like, we could complain about Fortnite or whatever. The fact of the matter is they're always got new shit coming out. They always got shit that people are interested in. They always got new shit going on, new modes. The game looks radically different and radically better now, graphically.
Yeah. Can I just officially put my foot down on the Fortnite issue, Sam?
Sure, please.
Stop. It's time to stop shitting on Fortnite just because it's popular and stupid. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to be that guy, because I don't play Fortnite, to be perfectly honest with you.
No, I don't play Fortnite
either. Doing everything. It's doing everything right. What's the problem?
It's an actually, like... It's like the example of it's an actually good live service game. I don't play it because I don't really like Battle Royale personally. Like,
yeah, and I don't.
But even so,
I don't need to play it personally. But I can look at it and see that it's still alive and it's still kicking and it's still working.
And I have played it before. I played this shit in 2017, 2018, and guess what? It was good. Like,
I have had the opportunity to play it, and I just never got around to it. But, like, I've never been against the idea of Fortnite. And so Fortnite becoming this, like, popular thing, and now everyone hates it because, oh, it's fucking popular. Same with, like, Among Us and all this shit. Like, I always love seeing, like, there'll be, like, the hot take threads on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's always just like, oh, you know, I think Last of Us is boring. I think COD is boring. I think Zelda's boring. I think, what else is popular is boring, right? I think Fortnite sucks. You know, I think whatever sucks, you know, all this shit, right? But I always love seeing the rare gem of, I don't think Among Us is a very good game. And it's like, what did this, it's like, oh, this free game that was made in MS Paint. Oh, you don't like it? Oh my God, tell me more. What's the problem? It's like anyone coming out swinging for Last of Us or, you know, Crash Bandicoot, Mario, Zelda, GTA, like, you know, that's a hot take. You know, that's gonna upset a lot of people. Those games got a lot of games, like, or got a lot of fans, but like, you're gonna come out swinging for Among Us. I don't even think Among Us fans are gonna be upset with that statement. It's like, all right, well, I'm sorry you don't like this stupid party game where half the fun is the group you play it with. It would be like if someone came out and was like, yeah, I think Yahtzee's a shit game. Like, you know, just came out swinging for Yahtzee.
It's like, whoa, bro.
I know the meme is everyone hates Monopoly or whatever, so you have a lot of people who just like shit on Monopoly.
No, the real shitty game is Sorry. Sorry sucks. Like,
Sorry's not good. I like you know something, Sam? This is so stupid. I want to get back into kinetic games. I want to get back into games made for babies, where the entire point of it is to pick things up or to move things.
I got a game for you that we can play. We can play. Fucking My Friend. Have you heard of Moncala? One of the greatest.
Yes, Moncala's a good choice.
Ancient. True. I don't know the history behind Moncala, but it is fucking that game.
Gotta
is
move those beans, dude.
It's legendary. Dude, that game has great game feel. Like, unironically, Mancala has great game feel. The picking up of the beads and slowly dropping each one into the bucket is so good, dude. Mathing out your bead drops so you're able to get an extra turn. Goated. God tier game, Myles.
Yeah, like, this is the thing about all these kinetic games. It's like, they're all good. I mean, obviously, something like chess or checkers, Connect 4, like, those have some strategy components to it. Like, but, like, I'm a big fan of the kinetic game. Like, I'm a fan of fucking pickup sticks. Dude, I think I would get...
You like jacks?
I was about to say, I think I could get really, like, good at Operation. I would be... If I could get my hands on a copy of Operation right about now, dude, I would actually become a god at Operation. That would be my tiddlywinks, where, like, I take this so seriously. And I'll know all the meta about it. I'll just be like, yeah, the thing with the spleen is the spleen's got one of the tightest entries from the top, but if you move in from the side, it's easier not to get buzzed. Like, that's what I want to do. Like,
Myles, what I think you need, in my humble opinion, is you just need to do other stuff with your hands. Like, you just need to get involved in another hobby or activity that involves your hands, like model building or painting or like model painting or
sculpting.
Sculpting or
puppetry.
Or chopping wood or going to the mines.
Going to the depths, mine some zonite.
Like,
yeah, no, I that's the thing, like, but doing that shit with my hands, right? Like playing Operation or playing Ants in the Pants.
Playing Don't Wake Daddy.
Yeah, Don't Wake
Slowly
Dad.
pressing the alarm clock so you don't wake Daddy.
Yeah, what's the game with the swords? Or you gotta pull the swords out of the barrel. That's another one.
What?
It's like a barrel full of swords, and you gotta pull swords out of the barrel very slowly. You gotta slide them out. Similar to like a Jenga style, like.
Oh, I've never heard of that. But Jenga though, Jenga fucks.
Jenga's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, Jenga's probably Jenga's actually in my top 10 favorite video games of all time. You know what?
Boom Blocks.
You know what I'm gonna say, Sam? Actually,
Boom Blocks is awesome.
Fun fact: there actually is. You know, Steven Spielberg produced that game. Right?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
That's kind of sick. There actually is.
No wonder it's so good.
Yeah, there actually is a shrine in Tears of the Kingdom that's just Jenga.
Where you gotta like just pull the pieces
with Ultra
out
Hand,
slowly.
yeah, with Ultra Hand. It's a great idea.
Sure. That is really funny. That is awesome.
But I gotta get into. Oh, you know another game that everyone dunked on for being a ripoff, even though it fucking wasn't, and it's like, and also that there had enough distance between it that like proves my point about like people just want what Nintendo don't. They don't actually like care. Is 3D Dot Game Heroes.
Yeah,
that game is solid as fuck.
That game's awesome, actually.
And it's a remake, or not a remake, it's a, mechanical, like, refreshing of Zelda 1. But no one likes Zelda 1. So, of course, everyone's like, oh, this is fucking a ripoff of Zelda 1. Even though it's a game, by the way, these people who are saying it's a ripoff don't like the original game. But meanwhile, you get some, like, fucking A Hat in Time. And I'll dunk on A Hat in Time because I actually fucking played that
game
piece
sucks.
of shit.
That game blows!
And they'll just be like, can I just talk about the badges in A Hat in Time for a second and how that is the ultimate cart before the horse move?
By all means.
The badges in A Hat in Time are so funny because every single badge with not every single one, but like quite a few of the badges quite a few of the hats, honestly, should just be innate fucking platforming abilities that are instead tied to these cosmetics you have to switch between, right? A lot of them just aren't interesting enough movement-wise to be a separate fucking item. Like, I don't know, the ability to sprint or
yeah, the movement is so... My problem with fucking Hand Time is the movement is so fucking basic and boring. You get a fucking jump, a double jump, a fucking dive that goes way too fucking far... a wall jump that's boring as fuck, and the world's worst homing attack.
Which stalls you in the air, and then seems to freeze the rest of the game logic. It's really bizarre.
Dude, it's one of the most grossest abilities I have ever used in a video game. Like, straight up.
And you know what it is? The reason that a lot of these moves are the way they are because they probably just didn't have the time to fine tune the game to the degree where okay, these jumps can be fucking perfect. These jumps we can expect perfection or at least something really precise out of these jumps because we've just fine-tuned the shit out of them. Because, and I'm not going to say it's because they're lazy, it's because that shit is hard to do.
Yeah.
And they probably just didn't have the time necessary and the head count necessary to really, put their hands on it like that. But that's why there's a piece of shit homing attack in the game. Because that's an immediate correction of a problem. And again, with the badges in A Hat in Time, the whole reason that there are badges is because badges as a concept vaguely calls to mind Paper Mario or other, classic GameCube era games that these fucking weirdos would have nostalgia for. But I didn't see any badges in Mario 64. Now, Psychonauts had badges, but the badges in Psychonauts were literally they're just Zelda items. They're problem-solving abilities of some kind. And half of them are useless. They have 2 or 3 extra combat uses, or they are a cute Easter egg. I mean, clairvoyance is basically the lens of truth that shifts your perspective. The shield is a deflector weapon. It's more of a combat implementation. Psy beam is arrows. And then there's a couple of others, like Confusion Grenade, kind of an AoE move that's also is basically the Muddle Bud. Or I guess the Muddle Bud's the Confusion Grenade. Like when you really break it down, I mean, Levitation is different. That's sort of a steed type thing. That's also a platform implement, which is fun as fuck. But either way, those are not, a lot of them are just Zelda items. Not many of them actually help with platforming, really. They just help with the adventure element of the game, and one could even consider them no different than verbs in a classic Tim Schafer point and click game. They are universal ways to interact with problems that you solve to make progress in a quirky world. They are kind of the same thing as a verb in one of these games. But Hat in Time is not Psychonauts. Even though they're it's a combination of Psychonauts and Super Mario Sunshine. It's no, it's a combination of neither of those things. I mean, yes, you have the space-time levels, which are just the stupid fucking... It's the shitty Super Mario Sunshine levels, and I say shitty as a compliment because they're fucking awesome, but with no acapella music, and it's the boringest track ever composed by fucking Grant Kirkhope. Imagine fucking advertising, we got Grant Kirkhope to compose this, and the song sucks,
And also too, the linear platforming levels without FLUDD in Mario Sunshine are fun because you're forced to use Mario's complicated movement mechanics in Sunshine, one of the few times in the game where you're actually required in really challenged in using those mechanics. And
you have no safety net not to. You either make this jump or you don't.
Yeah, so it requires you to engage with the mechanics on a deeper level and understand you can spin jump in this game, and learn how to do the more advanced movement text with Mario. That's what makes Sunshine a fun, interesting game to replay. Where with Hat in Time, since it's got basic bitch ass platforming anyways, that's not much better than Crash Bandicoot 1 when you really break it down. It's it's not that interesting. Just platforming for the sake of platforming is not that interesting. Okay, whoa. Okay, well now we're going. Now it says we're going again. We're recording again.
But we're not going anymore because we're actually ending this episode right away before anything terrible happens. We're going to end the episode right away now. Isn't that right, Samuel?
Yes, that's right. That's right. If you want to hear more about Hat in Time, too bad. Join the Discord and we'll shit on it there. Link in the description. Make sure, of course, to also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify, iTunes, and other places you can get podcasts for the audio version of the show. Myles, that's all I have for today. Got nothing else. Any last words to the coping crackheads out there?
Headphones hurt my ears.